Social justice, 1, 2, 3. Woo, woo. I wanna be PC. Woo, woo. It's just the way to be for me and you. Woo, woo. Your hateful slurs are through. Woo, woo.
I call woo woo on you.
Woo, woo. We'll fight until you're PC black and blue.
Woo woo.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. If you haven't been on social media the last few days, you might not have noticed this. We had the Trial of Magneto is coming up from Leah Williams. She was wrapping up her X Factor run at issue number 11. And things appear to have gone off the rails. There's been a lot of pushback by the customer base of X Factor itself. I don't think they appreciated the storyline that concluded the X Factor run. And here talking to you about that is my good friend Perch for the Comics by Perch podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So Marvel essentially, they spoiled the last page of this issue. But that is not the controversy at this point. There was a storyline in here, and you can tell that Leah Williams, the writer, who me personally, I think is probably the worst writer at Marvel. I'm shocked that she's getting this Trial of Magneto series after the sales and what people think of as far as X Factor, and then she did that Extremis book. Not a lot of success, but she keeps getting opportunities. And X-Force or X Factor number 11 is a microcosm of that, where it's just one of the worst written comics I've ever seen. You can see that Leah Williams was wrapping up about 5 storylines in one comic book that were all going to be overshadowed by the very last page when you get the reveal of what's leading to the Trial of Magneto. Yeah. It's ham-fisted. It's not put together very, very well, and a lot of people came away heavily offended by what happens to Prodigy as far as Assault, his death. And there's this weird part with Aurora and Dakin, where I guess Dakin's getting turned on by learning the details of the Assault. It was crazy stuff.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my hits. You got me stuck back on one of the worst writers at Marvel.
You disagree?
Maybe. I sorry. There's a whole Iron Man Hellcat series over there. I might argue with you, but fair enough. Yeah. I mean, what could he even do? The issue was a mess, but I mean, it was not, the series has been a mess. I mean, from a extended storyline on Mojo World to, and you could see this coming. The Extremis book that was out in Age of X-Man was one of the most baffling books that I've ever seen. And I'm shocked that they've continued down this path. It was a terrible title in many ways, but you're alluding to the controversy, I think, that came out of this book. And I mean, I will get into it, but I mean, if you court insane people as your audience, you cannot be shocked when the insane people turn on you.
You can ask Chelsea Cade.
Yeah, don't encourage insane people to be your customer base. X Factor is such it's a case study in like a comedy of errors. Like when this title was announced that it was canceled, people lost their minds over it. Of this, how could this be canceled? This is an affront to the LGBTQ community. This is Marvel hating people, right in time for Pride Month, because people didn't realize the title was canceled until this month for whatever reason. They just went on and on. And there were many tweets with hundreds of likes of people saying things like, this is the best comic Marvel is doing or has ever done. And yet, the sales were dismal. This title was down, at or below the 20,000 mark. It was heavily-ish pirated. I know that there's a lot of debate about that, but a lot of people were downloading this thing. There were threads where people are crying about this book getting canceled, and in the same thread talking about how, they would never pay for it. I mean, all of this sums up to, like, this is a nutty audience that you would cater to. So maybe not the biggest shock that this audience turned on its writer.
Not at all. This is one tweet I saw, and the writer of the tweet got the name of the comic wrong. They call it X Factor, but it says, so Leah Williams, writer of X Factor issue 10, really said, I'm going to release a story about a serial killer targeting young queer black men. I will also show Prodigy's dead body while Aurora and Dakin flirt for laughs, and his death will be brushed aside because Wanda dies. Pretty good summary of what the
I mean,
book is.
That's a take. I mean, this book, if you read it, it's not a good comic. You may be hoping you're getting an entertaining train wreck, and you don't. You just get a train wreck. It's a painful book. Look, I mean, the characters are written bizarre. There's a lot of questions. Like, there's way too much focus on iBoy, who last we got his age, he was 15. So what he's doing in all these scenarios is a mystery too. But I mean, the basic structure is Prodigy's been trying to figure out who killed him. He comes to the conclusion that, or he realizes that he went to a dance club. He was picked up. He left
himself a phone with a message.
Yeah, left himself a phone, which is also convoluted and weird, but okay. And he gets picked up by a rich Hollywood producer who is they throw everything at he's racist, he's a serial killer, he's homophobic, he may or may not have sexually assaulted the character. He does murder him.
I took it that he did.
I assume that he did. Who knows? We do know that he left the body in the basement, in the wine cellar, because that's what you do when you're a rich Hollywood producer. You just pile up bodies in the basement under the stairs. So of course, Prodigy finds out about this, confronts the guy, and has this moment of justice. And I'm sure when Leah was writing this, it was intended to be a triumphant moment of the character confronting a abuser and catching them and sending them to jail. I think that was what was in her head. Unfortunately, the people who wrote it felt it was exploiting, all those things for.
What's crazy is Aaron Sparrow, when he was writing his Darkwing Duck for Joe Books, it was canceled early, and he was in the middle of writing a one-shot, and they said, you're getting one issue after that, and it was supposed to be like a 3-issue story he was going to do after that to wrap up something really big. He realized he didn't have enough time to do that story, but he concentrated on his one-shot, decided to tell a more intimate story about the character in there. It ends up being, in his mind, the best story arc he's ever written, because he adapted to the situation that was given to him. You can see that Leah Williams was told abruptly, your X Factor series is concluding at the end of Hellfire Gala. You're going to have this big reveal. And she decides to cram everything in. Nothing has any time to breathe. And you're right, it's not executed well. It feels weird. It feels like this assault and death or afterthoughts. It feels like none of the friends care. And it's really strangely written. Really strange.
Yeah, I mean, this is a mess of a book. Yes. I mean, the whole confrontation, everything else, they go through all this. You referenced Aurora is really angry. I mean, all the characters kind of, iBoy gets to give the guy skin cancer for some reason. Aurora comes in and kind of just chastises him on the floor for a while. And Dakin, who's kind of looking on, who, by the way, for the majority of his comic career has been written as a serial killer himself. He's getting super horny by all this, and they wander off to presumably have sex in the driveway. It's just, and then they kind of clumsily tack on 4 pages at the end of Scarlet Witch being found dead.
Speed discovering his mother dead. So Here's another tweet. I think this is where we get into what people are upset about. Will someone please tell, and this is redacted, that the sexual assault and violent murder of a queer black man by a white writer is not how to celebrate Pride Month in a year of racial reckoning, not to mention killing Wanda after an anti-Roma police murder.
I mean, sure. It's a terrible comic. I mean, maybe people should just be offended that it's a terrible comic, or relieved that these horrible things. It feels like that's really, it's like the train has crashed and people are upset because the wine has not been chilled properly on the train. I mean, sure, it's a mess of a comic, and people went nuts over this. They wished Leah Williams would be killed. They openly talked about the funny thing is we're 1 month from this is the best comic Marvel has ever done to, Leah Williams has always been a racist. And, this is no surprise to anyone who's read her work. To see that kind of whiplash, first of all, I have to believe this is absolutely baffling to Leah Williams, who's watching all this go down in real time. We know that, this group of ex-writers are heavily monitor what's going on social media. So I can only imagine what their afternoon was like. But it is, again, if you court crazy people as your audience, you get crazy things. Eventually, the snake bites you that you've been caring for. Just bizarre. And by the way, to cap it all off, this comic ends with a full 1-page kind of retrospective and thank you to the community that she helped build, which is just hilarious given everything that went on.
Here's another take. This is why it's so funny. I don't really follow recent Marvel comics, but
Sure.
whoever greenlit the X Factor issue with black bisexual character Prodigy's graphic assault should absolutely be fired. Tasteless, and on the heels of Pride Month and Juneteenth as well. Shame on Leah Williams. I don't read the book. I don't keep up with what's going on, but they absolutely need to be fired.
I mean, that is on brand for the audience that they are currently marketing and catering to. Well, it's funny, like when people actually read the book, you did notice a lot of the anger calm down, and people just came to the conclusion it was a terrible comic. Not that it was any of these things. I mean, the story got leaked by some people who wanted to stir up trouble, and the conspiracy part of me wonders who leaked some of these pages out early. I have, not to start anything, but you do kind of wonder if some of the jealousy in that Marvel office. But anyway, it is.
I know who you're talking about. I got you.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe. But it's an audience that isn't reading comics, isn't paying attention to anything that's happening, but wants.
I wouldn't pay for this, but you better fire her.
Yes, exactly. Wants to have a complete say in who's being hired, what books are being produced, and the makings of the company. That is so 2021 Marvel at this point.
There were a couple of reasonable takes. I liked this one. I'm glad X Factor was canceled. Me too. I really hated how Leah Williams treated people on Twitter. She was mean and arrogant and would often attack the comic book readers who didn't agree with her. Hopefully a new writer touches X Factor in the future, someone more professional. Hey, if you're going to call for someone to be fired, you should at least have a decent reason like this guy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the title wasn't selling. I mean, the market did take care of it in the midst of everything. It's just, it is, I don't know. It's all baffling. And some of these takes, like, how dare you do this in Pride Month? I mean, if your issue is that it's hateful, just depiction of murder and other things, like, so it's okay in August. You're good with all this stuff in October, just not June. All right. That's a very weird way of looking at things.
And then Jamie Andreasen, who I've had on the channel on the Comics Aficionados, he summed it up best. I take comfort in the fact that all these widely unhinged people complaining about X Factor 10, wishing plagues and pestilence upon Leah Williams, most likely didn't pay for the comic and probably don't know how to read either.
For sure.
Good take, Jamie. That's probably about the truth, isn't it?
What a bizarre. It is the perfect cap to all of this, though. It is the perfect summary of this. It's you angrily courted an audience that was self-describing themselves as not customers of the book. You continuously appeal to that, and then at its conclusion, that entire audience called for you to be fired and run out of the industry. So that is a story arc right there.
So this is all kind of covering up the real issue, and that's the X-Men office. It feels like people they're being rewarded for failure. How did she get on from this? Obviously Jordan White had to have seen this story. How does she go from here to getting to write The Trial of Magneto, which is like an event book? It's not an event, but it's an event series. It's supposed to be important. This is the worst writer in your office. That includes Tini Howard and Jerry Duggan doing the worst work of his life. And you can't let Leah Williams go. We can't give somebody else a trial run on The Trial of Magneto that perhaps can actually write a decent, coherent narrative. What is wrong with that office? It seems very incestuous.
It's a club. I mean, and that's summed up on that last page where you get a picture of Teeny and Vita and Leah kind of, mugging for the camera. And they talk in that thing about the camaraderie. And this is a group of friends. And this is a club. It is. The office is a club. I mean, this on the heels of the Jordan White interview earlier this week, where, we learned that Hickman's plans have radically changed and they're moving in a different direction and it's kind of being steered in a different way. This is a friendship group that's making comics. And again, if Marvel wants to spend their money that way, that's their business. Certainly they can do that. But yeah, she's not going anywhere. There will be a comic after Trial of Magneto, and all these people are going to stay together until Marvel finally steps in and disbands it because the sales keep falling. That's so how long
until Jonathan Hickman says no mas, I can't have my name associated with any of this anymore. They've sullied my reputation enough.
I think Jonathan Hickman and he's got the Chris Claremont deal at this point. He's getting a regular check for not putting in work, and I think he's gonna ride that until forever. I mean, Claremont's been riding that for more than a decade, so get that Claremont money.
It's crazy. I imagine we're gonna get a Spider-Man Slack chat, so there'll be like a little insular Spider-Man group that no one will be able to criticize, and there will never be any changes. It's not a healthy change for Marvel Comics, and certainly not a healthy change for X-Men with what we've been seeing.
It is not. I did hear for some people this week, there definitely some of the other groups are trying to establish the same kind of ex-office behavior for Spider-Man and others. There's definitely a push from some of the creators to do that and some of the editorial, but management's pushing back apparently and is not excited to replicate the ex-office. It is not, at least internally, being perceived as the same success as maybe some people think it is.
Well, I can't. It says go read X Factor 10 if you want to see as bad as it can get. And this is coming on the heels of Age of X-Men. What was worse, Age of X-Men or Hellfire Gala?
Age of X-Men went longer, so by volume, Age of X-Men. But at least Hellfire Gala wrapped up in a month, so I'll give it that.
Hey, I was going to do a Hellfire Gala wrap-up video with you, but I can't do it. There's two things positive to talk about. The entire thing was a shit show. The punch in the groin with that thing is, I think, what Gary Duggan went on and say, who wants to be in next year's Hellfire Gala? No, please, no, next year. Stop right now. Yeah, one was enough. So, Perch, thank you so much talking about the Leah William controversy. I don't think she's going to get canceled, but they're certainly giving it a go right now.
Yeah, they'll move on to somebody else tomorrow.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.